If you have a hard time forgiving and hold on to grudges, this video is for you. I'm Dr. Rob Smith, and I'm a performance psychologist and an author of a new book called Shooting Out of Your Mind. If you watch this video today, you're going to learn a basic tool for you to begin the process of forgiveness, to reconcile with yourself or with someone else in a way that will bring a greater peace of mind. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm a real hat guy. Like I am going to do, I hope that you're going to put your thinking cap on and learn this important life skill. So if you're ready, let's jump in. First, before we talk about forgiveness, I'm going to talk a little bit about grudges, because a lot of times people hold grudges because they feel wrongly treated. And more often than not, they're justified. There's been a harmful thing done to them. They're not over it yet. They're reprocessing the hurt and the implications and the impact that it's had on their life. And they feel darn justified in being upset and in really having an awful lot of animosity toward the offender. That's understandable. It is. But like all grief, forgiveness is a process of letting go. And it's a letting go of the hurt that affected you in a very deep way. And why do that? Well, some people think, oh, I'm never going to forgive that person. And in doing so, what they tell themselves and others, by holding on to their resentment and their grudge, in a sense, it's sort of a justification that the other person be held in some lower place in society, whereas they themselves feel elevated because they would never do something so awful. All right, so they get kind of caught in that trap. Another trap is that they feel that by saying that they forgive someone, that somehow they're also saying that it was okay. And it's not okay. It's never going to be okay. And so, of course, that's silly. It's not the same. Forgiveness is not the same as saying that something was okay to have done to them. All right, so that's another important piece to get out of the way. Probably the most compelling reason why you might want to forgive is that when you hold on to a grudge, you sort of fuel up anger, and in your body comes out cortisol levels. And what's going to happen is you're going to generate an awful lot of intense feelings in your body. And that actually puts these toxins into your bloodstream. And so that, in a sense, when you're not forgiving someone, you're holding on to that grudge and you're sitting there mired in your own anger, you're the one going through it. The other person's not affected. Maybe they're dead. Maybe they're not in your life anymore. So it's not like you're holding a grudge is going to somehow affect them. It's only affecting you. And the people that are left in your life, they're the ones that are going to be kind of around this bitter person who keeps bringing it up. All right. So you really want to think about not harming yourself anymore by holding on to that grudge. And again, also, the important thing is that all people who hold on to grudges maintain the victim status. Because, they did this horrible thing to me, I'll never forgive them. Well, that means that you're always going to be a victim. Instead of someone who sits there and goes back and looks in the rearview mirror and always talks about what happened and why it impacts them and how they wish it weren't so. Instead, what you want to do is you want to let go of that anger. You also want to let go of the feeling of helplessness that comes along with being stuck in the victim role, right? And it's impossible to have peace of mind if you're going to hold on to that same level of resentment. And I've heard countless examples. I was deeply affected by an episode that was on 60 Minutes that covered that topic. And I was brought to tears on a couple of occasions to see how the perpetrators who were in prison for having done these really horrible things were participating in this program with the victims, the people that were on the outside but needed to kind of work it through. And what happened was, in each case, they went through this process of reconciliation, and I'll be describing a tool in this video that will cover a letter exercise that will help you get to this. In this restorative justice program, they got a chance eventually to confront their perpetrator. And they went into the prison. And the guy, in both cases, these were guys. They were in their prison uniform, and the person who was in their civilian clothes has a chance to kind of confront them. And then something amazing happened. By telling them that they forgave this person, they were able to release the resentment. The perpetrator, in both cases that I recall, they were brought to tears and they were humbled by it. And in one case, this woman who literally got shot in the head by the perpetrator, many, many years later, she survived it miraculously. But she went in and she forgave this guy, and she talks to him monthly still. They consider themselves friends at this point, and it's remarkable to see how the healing can happen by this process. So regarding the exercise that I talked about, I think it's important to acknowledge that you have been hurt and that it's okay to not be over it yet. But in order for you to let go of the grudge and to move on with your life and to feel a greater sense of peace of mind, you might want to consider this exercise. It's a letter exercise in which you're going to write an apology letter to you from the perpetrator's perspective. So the person who offended you, you're going to have this letter come from them, and it's going to be to you with all the steps of an effective apology that I described, by the way, in another one of my videos if you're really interested in learning more about apologies. What you're trying to accomplish by doing this is you're going to be looking at your pain again, but this time not from your own perspective, but from an outside person's perspective to you. The 6 steps are: acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the hurt. We're talking about then showing some appreciation and responsibility for having done what they did. The 3rd step would be to show some empathy for the impact it had. The 4th step is to say what they wish they had done differently. Step 5 is to say why they value them and why they're apologizing. And step 6 is to make a proposal going forward for a hopeful future. And again, you're writing this from the other person's perspective to you. So my name is Rob. So it would be a letter from someone who hurt me that said, "Dear Rob, this has been a letter that's been a long time in the waiting, and I've been thinking a lot about what I did to you, and I now want to take the time to apologize sincerely. What I did was this," and they would describe what that was. And then they would go on to saying why it happened, but not excuse themselves, not say, "Well, I came from a broken family," or "I was in a hurry." What I don't want to hear is I don't want to hear them say what they said in a way to kind of excuse themselves from responsibility. That's really important. Step 3 is to show some empathy. Well, when you're writing this letter to yourself, who better than yourself knows the impact, right? So if you were to say, "And I know it's affected you," if you're writing this letter, the person would say, "I know it's affected you in the following ways." You're able to go into great detail. I encourage people, my clients, when they're writing this letter, to really go into depth with this particular part, because when they're mired in their resentment and they're looking back at all the hurt that it caused, this is the part I want you to get out on paper. And then you want to go to step 4, which is what you wish you would have done differently or what that person wishes. And step 5, they might say something about why they value you or why they value saying they're sorry to you and apologizing deeply. And in the last step, you're going to say a hopeful wish for your future. So this person might say, "Going forward, I hope that this experience has in some way made you stronger and has strengthened relationships from the people that have treated you well. And even if you're not going to be in my life anymore, I hope that this doesn't always burn a hole in your heart when you think about what happened, and instead that you can look at it as another step toward the growth of your beautiful person that you are." And that's really important, to say important words. Now, you might not write those words. If those don't mean something to you, that's fine. But this is really a you exercise for you to be able to write it out as a way to get all these ideas out, to get these thoughts through, because you may never hear them from the offender. So you have to do it for yourself. By the way, forgiveness is not going to be an event. It's not like you're going to say, "I've now forgiven this person. It's over," right? What happens is it's like grief. It's like when you lose a loved one, you lose the person. And then you kind of get to the point where you're not thinking about them every day, but you're still thinking about them. When you're forgiving and letting go of a hurt, you're also going to consider it a process. And every once in a while, something's going to come up for you that's going to stir it back up again, and you might have to just to go back into forgiving all again, because you know that holding on to that resentment is not healthy for you or the people around you. In this video, you learned an important piece about why it's important to let go of grudges and to learn how to forgive. And then I offered a tool for you to begin that process. And remember, I talked about it being a process, not a one-time event. This exercise by itself won't magically make you feel better. It's going to be the beginning of a process in which you start to turn your perspective on your pain. You're now going to look at it as a strength, as something that you will use to build your life in a more productive way going forward, instead of just looking in the rearview mirror and being upset and helpless and wondering why this ever happened to you. In the book that I referred to earlier called Shooting Out of Your Mind, it's a basketball, mental, and physical training book. And so you're not going to find this forgiveness exercise in the book itself. However, a lot of what I teach the athletes that I work with has to do with forgiving themselves. And so that letter exercise that I described in this is actually a letter to you from you, so that you learn how to forgive yourself for big mistakes that you've made. And if you found this video useful, please share it with other people and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to buy the book, click on the link. It's in the description below. Thanks for watching, and best wishes.